Sarah Chen walked into the busy courthouse on a sunny Monday morning. Nobody looked at her twice. She wore plain blue jeans and a simple white shirt. Her black hair was tied back in a neat ponytail. She carried an old brown bag that had seen better days. Sarah looked like any normal person coming to watch a trial. She sat in the back row of the courtroom. From here, she could see everything without being noticed. She watched as people filled the seats. Reporters with notebooks sat together on one side. Family members of the police officers sat in the front rows. They all looked worried but hopeful. The 5 police officers walked in together. Officer Reynolds was the tall one with gray hair. He led the group. Officer Martinez was shorter with a thick mustache. Officer Wilson was young with a clean-shaved face. Officer Thompson was heavy-set with a round face. Officer Davis was thin and nervous-looking. They all wore nice suits and smiled at their families as they passed by. These 5 men had worked in the Westridge Police Department for many years. Everyone in town used to respect them. But things had changed. For the past 3 years, they had been taking money from drug dealers. They let criminals do bad things in exchange for cash. They put innocent people in jail by lying about evidence. When people tried to speak up, the officers would threaten them. The whole town of Westridge knew something was wrong. People were afraid to go to the police for help. Store owners paid protection money just to stay safe. Drug dealers worked openly on street corners. The town was changing for the worse. Sarah watched as the officers took their seats next to their expensive lawyer. The lawyer wore a fancy suit and gold cufflinks. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than what most people in Westridge made in a week. The officers looked relaxed. They smiled and whispered to each other. Officer Reynolds even gave a thumbs up to his wife in the audience. The judge entered the room. He was an older man with white hair and glasses. Everyone stood up until he sat down. The judge looked tired. He had seen many cases like this before. The court clerk called out the case number and the names of the officers. The prosecutor stood up next. His name was James Lee, a young man who looked nervous. He straightened his tie and cleared his throat. Sarah could tell he was worried. She had read about him in the case files. James was a good lawyer who wanted to do the right thing. But this was his biggest case yet. "Your Honor," James said, "I regret to inform the court that our main witness will not be testifying today." A wave of whispers moved through the courtroom. The officers could not hide their smiles. Officer Reynolds leaned back in his chair, looking very pleased. James continued, "The witness has withdrawn due to fears about personal safety. We believe they have been threatened." The judge frowned. "Do you have proof of these threats, Mr. Lee?" James looked down at his papers. "Not at this time, Your Honor, but we ask for more time to find new evidence." The defense lawyer jumped up quickly. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The prosecution has no case. My clients are good officers who have served this community for years. They deserve to have these false charges dismissed immediately." The judge seemed to agree. He looked at James with disappointment. "Mr. Lee, I cannot keep delaying this trial without good reason. If you have no witness and no solid evidence, I will have to consider dismissing the case." The 5 officers were now openly smiling. They thought they had won. Officer Martinez patted Reynolds on the back. Officer Wilson winked at his family. They believed they would be walking out as free men very soon. Sarah watched it all from her seat in the back. She saw the officers celebrating too early. She saw the worried look on the prosecutor's face. She saw the judge ready to let these corrupt men go free. She had seen enough. Sarah reached into her worn bag and took out her phone. She sent a quick text message that simply said, "Now." Then she stood up and began walking down the center aisle of the courtroom. Everyone turned to look at this strange woman who dared to interrupt the proceedings. No one in that courtroom knew who she really was. No one knew that everything was about to change. All eyes in the courtroom followed Sarah as she walked down the aisle. Her steps were slow but sure. She did not look nervous even though everyone was watching her. The judge frowned at this unexpected interruption. "What is the meaning of this?" the judge asked. His voice was sharp with anger. Court is in session. Sarah stood tall in front of the judge. I apologize for the interruption, Your Honor. My name is Sarah Chen. The judge looked at her over his glasses. And why should I care who you are, Ms. Chen? You cannot just walk into my courtroom and disrupt proceedings. Sarah reached into her old brown bag. She pulled out a small leather wallet. When she opened it, a shiny gold badge caught the light. I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Your Honor. The room fell completely silent. Then whispers began to spread like fire. The reporters started writing quickly in their notebooks. The families of the officers looked confused and scared. The prosecutor, James Lee, dropped his pen in surprise. But the most interesting reaction came from the 5 police officers. Their smiles disappeared in an instant. Officer Reynolds sat up straight, his face turning pale. Officer Martinez grabbed the edge of the table. Officer Wilson looked like he might be sick. Officer Thompson closed his eyes, as if hoping this was just a bad dream. Officer Davis began to sweat visibly. I have evidence that these officers are guilty of all charges, Sarah said. Her voice was calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. And I have proof that they threatened the witness who was supposed to testify today. The defense lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We have no advance notice of this person or any new evidence. The judge looked confused. Director Chen, why is the FBI involved in a local police corruption case? And why are you personally here instead of sending an agent? Sarah looked directly at the 5 officers as she answered. The corruption in Westridge goes deeper than anyone knows. It connects to federal crimes, drug trafficking across state lines, money laundering, and the intimidation of federal witnesses. She turned back to the judge. As for why I am here personally, I have my reasons. Sometimes the best way to catch criminals is to watch them when they think they are safe. The defense lawyer was now red in the face. Your Honor, we demand to see this so-called evidence immediately. The judge nodded. I agree. Director Chen, what exactly do you have? Sarah nodded to someone at the back of the courtroom. The doors opened, and 3 people in dark suits walked in. They carried boxes of files and computer equipment. FBI agents ready to present evidence. We have video recordings of these officers meeting with known drug dealers, Sarah said. We have bank records showing large cash deposits that they cannot explain. We have phone records of calls made to threaten witnesses. Officer Reynolds suddenly stood up. This is all lies. You have nothing. His lawyer tried to pull him back down, but Reynolds pushed him away. You cannot do this to us. We are the police. We protect this town. Sarah looked at him calmly. Is that what you call it? Protection. Taking money from criminals. Putting innocent people in jail. Threatening anyone who tries to speak the truth. The courtroom was in chaos now. People were talking loudly. The judge banged his gavel many times to restore order. The other 4 officers sat frozen in their seats, watching their freedom slip away. When the room finally quieted, Sarah continued, There is one more piece of evidence, Your Honor, something the officers do not know about yet. She looked directly at Officer Davis. The thin officer looked back at her with fear in his eyes. He seemed to be trying to remember if he had ever met this woman before. Officer Davis has been helping us, Sarah said. The other 4 officers turned to look at Davis with shock and anger on their faces. Davis jumped up from his seat. No, that is not true. I never helped the FBI. Davis shouted. His face was red, and his eyes were wild with panic. She is lying. But Sarah just smiled slightly. If you never helped us, how did you know I was talking about the FBI? I never said who Officer Davis was helping. Davis realized his mistake too late. He had given himself away. He fell back into his chair, defeated. Reynolds lunged at Davis, his hands reaching for his former friend's throat. You traitor. Court officers rushed forward to pull Reynolds away. The other officers were quickly surrounded and held back. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Order. I will have order in my court, the judge shouted. As the chaos unfolded, Sarah Chen stood calmly in the center of it all. This was only the beginning. The judge called for a 1-hour break after the chaos in the courtroom. Court officers took the 5 police officers to separate holding rooms. No one would let them talk to each other now. Sarah Chen watched as they were led away. Reynolds glared at her with hate in his eyes as he passed. In a small meeting room, Sarah sat with Prosecutor James Lee. FBI agents set up computers and spread files across the table. James still looked shocked by everything that had happened. "Director Chen, I had no idea the FBI was investigating this case," James said. He ran his fingers through his hair. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Sarah opened one of the files. "We couldn't tell anyone. We suspected there were more corrupt people in the police department, and maybe even in the courthouse. We needed to keep our work secret." James nodded slowly. "So what happens now? Do you take over the case?" "No," Sarah said. "This is still your case. We will work together. You will present our evidence to the court." An FBI agent brought in a laptop and opened it. "Director, we're ready with the recordings." Sarah turned the laptop so James could see the screen. "These videos show the officers meeting with drug dealers. Watch this one from last month." The video showed Officer Reynolds taking an envelope from a man on a dark street corner. The man was a known drug dealer in Westridge. Reynolds checked inside the envelope, counted something, and then nodded. "We have 50 videos like this," Sarah said. "And look at these bank records." She showed James papers with bank statements. All 5 officers had made large cash deposits on the same days each month. The amounts were always just under $10,000 to avoid bank reporting rules. "There's more," Sarah said. She pointed to another file. "Phone records show that Reynolds called our missing witness 3 times yesterday. The last call lasted 15 minutes. Right after that call, the witness contacted your office to withdraw their testimony." James looked at all the evidence with wide eyes. "This is incredible. But I still don't understand. Why are you personally handling this case? The FBI director usually doesn't work cases directly." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she opened another file and pushed a photo across the table. It showed a smiling older man standing in front of a small grocery store. "This was my father," she said. Her voice was softer now. "He owned Chen's Market on Oak Street for 30 years. When I was growing up, these officers would come to his store every week. They would take food without paying. They would demand money for protection. If he didn't pay, strange things would happen. Windows would break. Food would spoil. Customers would be scared away." James looked at the photo. "I'm sorry. Did you report it?" Sarah shook her head. "My father was an immigrant. He was afraid of the police. He was afraid no one would believe him over respected officers." She took the photo back and looked at it. "He died 3 years ago, still afraid. After his funeral, I started hearing stories about the growing corruption in Westridge. I knew I had to do something." In another part of the courthouse, Officer Davis sat alone in a small room. His hands were shaking. The door opened, and an FBI agent came in with a cup of water. "Officer Davis, Director Chen will see you now," the agent said. Davis looked up with fear in his eyes. "I never helped the FBI. She trapped me in there, made me look guilty to the others." The agent just held the door open. Davis had no choice but to follow. In a different room, Sarah was waiting. Davis sat across from her at a small table. "Why did you say I helped you? Now the others will kill me if they ever get the chance," Davis said. His voice was shaking. Sarah looked at him calmly. "You can actually help yourself now. We have evidence against all 5 of you, but the one who talks first always gets the best deal." Davis stared at her. "What kind of deal? Tell us everything. Every crime. Every name. Every detail. Help us find all the corrupt people in Westridge. Do that, and you might avoid spending the rest of your life in prison." Davis thought for a long time. He looked at his hands. Finally, he looked up at Sarah. "Reynolds is the leader. It all started with him 7 years ago, Davis began. He brought in the rest of us one by one. Sarah nodded to an FBI agent who started recording. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Back in the main courthouse hallway, families of the officers gathered together. They looked confused and scared. Reynolds' wife was crying. Martinez's brother was arguing with a court officer. Reporters were everywhere, taking photos and trying to get comments from anyone who would talk. The story of the FBI director showing up in person to catch corrupt cops was too big to ignore. The judge met with his clerk in his private chamber. In all my years on the bench, I've never seen anything like this, the judge said. Check if there's any legal reason I should step down from this case. The town of Westridge would never be the same after today. And Sarah Chen was just getting started. The courthouse clock showed 2 hours had passed. Everyone returned to the courtroom. The room was now completely full. More reporters had arrived after hearing the news. Regular people from town came to watch. Even the mayor of Westridge sat in the back row, looking worried. The 5 officers were brought back in. They no longer walked with confidence. They did not smile or joke. Officers Reynolds, Martinez, Wilson, and Thompson all glared at Davis. Davis kept his eyes on the floor. He would not look at his former friends. Their defense lawyer looked stressed. His neat suit was now wrinkled. He had spent the break making many phone calls. None of those calls had brought good news. Sarah Chen sat behind a prosecutor's table with James Lee. They had organized all the evidence into clear folders. FBI agents stood near the doors of the courtroom, watching everyone closely. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Be seated, he said. After careful consideration, I have decided to continue presiding over this case. But I want to be clear that I am deeply troubled by what has happened today. He looked at the 5 officers. In light of the new evidence and the accusation of witness tampering, I am revoking your bail. You will remain in custody until this trial is completed. The defense lawyer stood up quickly. Your Honor, my clients have strong ties to this community. They are not flight risks. They have families here. They also apparently have cash hidden away and connections to criminals who could help them disappear, the judge said firmly. My decision stands. The families of the officers began to cry. Reynolds' wife put her head in her hands. Martinez's children looked confused about why their father could not come home. The judge turned to James Lee. Mr. Prosecutor, you may present your case with this new evidence. James stood and buttoned his jacket. He looked more confident now. Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Special Agent Kevin Patel to the stand. A tall FBI agent walked to the witness stand. After he was sworn in, James asked him to explain what the FBI had found. Agent Patel described the videos of officers meeting with drug dealers. He showed bank records of unexplained cash deposits. He played recorded phone calls where the officers threatened people. The defense lawyer tried to object many times, but the judge overruled him. The evidence was too strong to ignore. When Agent Patel finished, James spoke again. The prosecution calls Officer Michael Davis to the stand. A shocked whisper went through the courtroom. No one had expected one of the defendants to testify against the others. The defense lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, my client cannot testify. I represent all 5 officers. This is a conflict of interest. The judge nodded. You're right. Officer Davis, do you wish to have separate representation? Davis looked up for the first time. Yes, Your Honor, and I wish to change my plea to guilty and cooperate with the prosecution. The other 4 officers exploded in anger. Reynolds tried to stand, but court officers pushed him back down. You rat, he shouted at Davis. You're dead. You hear me? Dead. The judge banged his gavel. Remove Officer Reynolds from my courtroom immediately, and gag the other defendants if they cannot control themselves. Court officers took Reynolds away. The other 3 officers sat in angry silence. A new lawyer was quickly found for Davis. After a short meeting, Davis returned to the stand. He looked nervous but determined. Officer Davis, James began, Can you tell the court how this corruption began? Davis took a deep breath. 7 years ago, Officer Reynolds came to me and the others. He said we could make extra money by helping certain people in town. At first, it was small things. Looking the other way when drug dealers worked on certain corners, warning them about police raids. And how did it grow from there? James asked. Soon, we were actively protecting drug dealers, taking regular payments from them. Then we started demanding money from store owners for protection. If they didn't pay, we would make trouble for them. Sarah watched from her seat as Davis described exactly what had happened to her father's store. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were tight fists under the table. Davis continued. Reynolds was always the leader. He kept most of the money. He told us who to target. He made the threats if anyone tried to report us. Did you ever plant evidence on innocent people? James asked. Davis looked down. Yes, if someone caused trouble for us, we would plant drugs in their car or home. We arrested at least 15 innocent people this way. The courtroom was completely silent now. Everyone was shocked by what they were hearing. The depth of corruption was worse than anyone had imagined. In the back of the courtroom, Sarah noticed a man slipping out quietly. He was the chief of police. Sarah nodded to an FBI agent, who followed the chief. There were still more people to catch in this web of corruption. The court took a lunch break after Davis finished his testimony. Sarah Chen walked outside the courthouse to get some air. Reporters tried to follow her, but FBI agents kept them back. She found a quiet spot under a tree and checked her phone. She had a message from the agent who followed the police chief. Chief Williams went straight to Mayor Bradley's office. Both are still there. Should we move on them? Sarah texted back. Not yet. Let them worry. We need more evidence on the mayor. She looked up at the old courthouse building. This case was growing bigger than anyone expected. If the mayor was involved too, this would shake the entire town to its core. James Lee joined her under the tree. Davis gave us a lot, but I'm not sure the jury will believe a man who admits he helped put innocent people in jail. Sarah nodded. That's why we need to find those innocent people. Get them to testify about what happened to them. Can we do that before the trial continues? James asked. We already started, Sarah said. My team has been quietly finding those people for months. 15 people Davis mentioned, plus 12 more we found on our own, all ready to tell their stories. James looked impressed. You've been planning this for a long time. Sarah looked toward the town. 3 years, since my father's funeral. Back inside the courthouse, the 3 remaining officers sat in a holding room. Martins paced back and forth. Wilson stared at the wall. Thompson kept shaking his head. This is all falling apart, Martins said. Davis is telling them everything. Reynolds is locked up somewhere else. What are we going to do? Wilson finally spoke. Maybe we should make a deal too, before it's too late. Thompson jumped up. No, we stick together. The mayor will help us. He has too much to lose if we talk. The mayor is probably saving himself right now, Wilson said. Everyone for themselves, that's how it works. As if on cue, their lawyer entered the room. He looked defeated. I just got a call from Mayor Bradley's office. They're withdrawing financial support for your defense. The 3 officers stared at him in shock. What does that mean? Martins asked. It means I can no longer represent you, the lawyer said, packing his briefcase. The mayor was paying my fees through a special fund. That's gone now. He can't do that, Thompson shouted. We know too much about him. The lawyer paused at the door. He already did. And my advice, off the record. Make a deal while you still can. He left without looking back. Across town at the mayor's office, Mayor Bradley was in a panic. He was throwing papers into a shredder while Chief Williams watched nervously. We need to get rid of everything, the mayor said. Any record of payments, any meetings with Reynolds, all of it. It's too late, the chief said. The FBI has been watching for months. They probably have copies of everything already. The mayor stopped shredding. Then we need to run. I have money in an account in Mexico. Enough for both of us to disappear. The chief shook his head. They'll find us. The FBI director herself is handling this case. Why would she do that unless this was personal for her? I don't know and I don't care. The mayor snapped. I'm not going to prison. Are you coming with me or not? Before the chief could answer, there was a knock at the door. The mayor's secretary spoke through the door. Sir, there are FBI agents here to see you. The mayor and chief looked at each other in fear. Back at the courthouse, court was back in session. Sarah and James had returned. The judge looked at the defense table, where the three officers sat without a lawyer. Where is your attorney? The judge asked. He quit, Your Honor, Martinez said. The mayor was paying him. The judge frowned. I see. And do you have other representation? No, Your Honor, Martinez admitted. We can't afford another lawyer. Then I will appoint public defenders for each of you, the judge said. But this will delay our proceedings. James stood up. Your Honor, while we wait for new defense attorneys to be appointed, the prosecution would like to present testimony from victims of these officers' actions. The judge considered this. Without defense counsel present, that would be problematic. However, I will allow you to present this evidence to me directly, to determine if it should be admitted when the trial continues. Sarah watched as James called the first victim. A young man named Michael Torres took the stand. He had spent 2 years in prison after the officers planted drugs in his car. They put the drugs in my car because I saw them taking money from a dealer, Michael said. When I got out of prison, I lost my job, my home, and my wife had left me. As Michael spoke, Sarah thought of her father. He had been lucky compared to some of these victims, but the fear and shame he felt had been just as real. Outside the courthouse, FBI agents led Mayor Bradley and Chief Williams up the steps in handcuffs. More pieces of the corruption puzzle were falling into place. News of the mayor and police chief's arrests spread through the courthouse like wildfire. People whispered to each other in the hallways. Reporters rushed outside to capture footage of the 2 men in handcuffs being led up the courthouse steps. Inside the courtroom, more victims continued to share their stories with the judge. A middle-aged woman named Rosa Mendez described how officers Reynolds and Thompson threatened to arrest her son if she did not pay them monthly protection money for her small restaurant. I paid them for 3 years, Rosa said, wiping tears from her eyes. Sometimes I could not buy food for my own family because I had to pay them first. The judge listened with growing anger on his face. After 5 victims had spoken, he called Sarah Chen and James Lee to approach the bench. This is far worse than I imagined, the judge said quietly. How many more victims do you have ready to testify? 27 in total, Your Honor, James replied. And we're finding more every day. The judge shook his head. I've seen enough. When the defense attorneys arrive, I will strongly encourage these officers to accept plea deals. If this goes to a full trial with all these witnesses, they will spend the rest of their lives in prison. Sarah nodded. That would be a fair outcome, Your Honor. In a separate holding room, Mayor Bradley and Chief Williams sat in silence. Both men still wore handcuffs. They had not spoken to each other since their arrest. The door opened, and 2 FBI agents led them into a meeting room. Sarah Chen was waiting for them. She sat calmly at the table with a thick folder in front of her. Gentlemen, she said, I thought we should have a chat before you meet with your lawyers. We have nothing to say without our attorneys present, Mayor Bradley said. He tried to sound confident, but his voice shook. Sarah opened the folder. That's your right, but you might want to hear what I have to offer first. She laid out several photos on the table. They showed the mayor meeting with known drug dealers. Another showed the chief accepting an envelope from Officer Reynolds. We have been watching you for a very long time, Sarah said. Bank records, phone calls, meetings, offshore accounts. We know everything. The chief's shoulders slumped. What do you want from us? Names, Sarah said simply. This corruption did not start or end in Westridge. We know you have connections to officials in other towns, state politicians, maybe even federal. Mayor Bradley laughed without humor. And why would we help you? Sarah leaned forward. Because the first one to talk gets the best deal. Just like with the officers. Davis is looking at 5 years. Reynolds is looking at 25. The two men looked at each other. Decades of friendship and criminal partnership hung in the balance. I need time to think, the mayor said finally. Sarah stood up. You have 1 hour. Then I talk to the chief alone. Back in the main courtroom, the 3 officers sat with their newly appointed public defenders. The lawyers looked overwhelmed as they quickly read through case files. The evidence against their clients was enormous. Martinez leaned over to his lawyer. I want to make a deal. I'll tell them everything about the mayor and the chief. Too late, his lawyer whispered back. They were just arrested. They might be making deals of their own right now. Martinez looked pale. Wilson and Thompson also whispered urgently to their lawyers. The brotherhood between them had completely fallen apart. In a quiet corner of the courthouse, Sarah found a moment alone. She took out her phone and looked at the photo of her father again. The kind face that had always tried to smile even when things were hard. She remembered how he would close the store early on days when the officers were expected to come for their payments. We are making progress, Dad, she whispered to the photo. An FBI agent approached her respectfully. Director Chen, the hour is up. The mayor wants to talk. Sarah put away her phone and nodded. Let's hear what he has to say. In the courthouse lobby, the people of Westridge gathered in growing numbers. Store owners, parents, students, workers. Many had suffered under the corrupt system for years. They shared stories with each other, finally feeling free to speak the truth. An old man who owned the hardware store shook his head in wonder. I never thought I would see this day. Those officers scared everyone for so long. A young woman nodded. My brother was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. He's still in prison. That might change soon, said a reporter who was listening nearby. I hear the FBI is reviewing all cases these officers were involved in. Your brother might come home. Hope was spreading through the town for the first time in years. The people of Westridge were starting to believe in justice again. Outside, the sun was setting behind the courthouse. Day 1 of the trial was ending, but the story of Westridge's path to freedom from corruption was just beginning. Morning arrived on day 2 of the trial. The courthouse was even more crowded than before. People lined up outside hoping to get seats. News vans from big city stations filled the parking lot. This small-town case had become national news overnight. Sarah Chen arrived early. She had been up most of the night reviewing new information. After their meeting yesterday, both Mayor Bradley and Chief Williams had decided to cooperate. Their statements opened up even bigger leads than Sarah had expected. Inside the judge's private chambers, Sarah and James Lee met with the judge before court began. The judge looked tired. He had also been up late reading reports. Director Chen, Mr. Lee, this case has grown beyond what my court can handle, the judge said. The mayor has implicated 2 state senators and a federal judge in this corruption network. Sarah nodded. Yes, Your Honor. We need to move part of this case to federal court, but we still want to complete the trial against these 5 officers here. For the people of Westridge, the judge said, understanding in his voice. Yes, Sarah replied. They need to see justice happen in their own courthouse. The judge agreed. We will continue with the officer's case here. The public deserves to see this through. When court opened, the room was completely full. The judge addressed everyone present. Before we continue, I want to announce that all 5 defendants have agreed to change their pleas to guilty. A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. Each has signed a cooperation agreement with the FBI and federal prosecutors. Sarah watched the faces of the people in the courtroom. Some looked relieved. Others seemed disappointed there would not be a full trial. Most just looked surprised that the officers had given up so quickly. The judge continued. However, before I accept these pleas and pass sentences, I believe the community deserves to hear the full truth. Each officer will make a complete statement about their crimes. One by one, the officers were brought to the stand. First was Officer Davis, then Wilson, Thompson, and Martinez. Officer Reynolds came last. Each told their story in their own words. They admitted to taking bribes, threatening innocent people, planting evidence, and working with drug dealers. Reynolds spoke with anger still in his voice. Yes, I did these things. But I was not the first. The officers before me taught me this system. It has been happening in Westridge for 30 years. Sarah watched him closely. She knew he was telling the truth about this part. The corruption in Westridge had deep roots. Roots that went back to when her father first opened his store. After the officers finished, the judge asked if anyone from the community wished to speak. Many hands went up. The judge selected Rosa Mendez, the restaurant owner, to speak first. These men took so much from us, Rosa said. Not just money. They took our trust. They took our safety. They made us afraid in our own town. More community members spoke. A teacher, a bus driver, a nurse. Each had stories about how the corrupt officers had affected their lives. Some cried as they spoke. Others spoke with strong, clear voices. All wanted justice. Sarah listened to every word. She thought about her father again. He would have been too afraid to speak up like this, but he would have been proud to see his daughter help make it possible. The judge finally asked Sarah if she wished to address the court. She had not planned to speak, but seeing the courage of the townspeople changed her mind. She walked to the center of the courtroom. I am here today, not just as the FBI director, Sarah began. I am also the daughter of a man who lived in fear in this town. My father, Henry Chen, owned a small grocery store on Oak Street. A few older people in the courtroom nodded in recognition of the name. These officers took money from my father every month for years. They called it protection, but they were the ones he needed protection from. Sarah looked directly at Reynolds. My father never reported it. He was afraid no one would believe him against respected police officers. He died still carrying that fear. She turned to face the whole courtroom. But today, I want everyone in Westridge to know that you can speak up. You can tell the truth, and you will be believed. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the reporters stopped writing to listen. This case is not just about 5 corrupt officers, or a mayor, or a police chief. It is about breaking the cycle of fear that has controlled this town for too long. As Sarah returned to her seat, an old man near the back of the courtroom slowly stood up. Others followed. Soon, everyone in the public seating was standing. They did not clap or cheer. They simply stood in silent respect. The judge looked out at his courtroom with pride in his community for the first time in many years. After everyone sat down, the judge prepared to announce the sentences. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the reporters held their pens still, waiting. I have reviewed the plea agreements and cooperation statements, the judge said. I have also considered the impact these crimes had on this community. He looked at each officer one by one. Officer Davis, as the first to cooperate, you are sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Davis nodded, accepting his punishment. Officer Wilson, you are sentenced to 8 years. Officer Thompson, 10 years. Officer Martinez, 12 years. The judge paused before addressing the last officer. Officer Reynolds, as the leader of this corruption, you are sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Reynolds showed no emotion. He had expected this. Additionally, the judge continued, all money seized from your accounts will go to a fund for the victims of your crimes. Your police pensions are revoked, and you are banned from ever working in law enforcement again. Court officers prepared to take the 5 men away. The judge spoke once more. This sentencing does not end the story of Westridge. It begins a new chapter. A chapter of healing and rebuilding trust. As the officers were led out, Sarah watched them go. Reynolds looked at her one last time. There was no more anger in his eyes, just defeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Sarah and James. Cameras flashed and microphones pointed at them from all directions. "Director Chen, will you continue to personally oversee the larger corruption investigation?" a reporter asked. Sarah nodded. "Yes, the FBI is committed to following every lead, no matter where it takes us." "Is it true that state senators are involved?" another reporter called out. "I cannot comment on ongoing investigations," Sarah replied calmly. "But I can say that we will not stop until we have uncovered all connections in this network." James stepped forward. "Today is about the people of Westridge. They stood up against corruption and won. That's the real story here." Later that afternoon, Sarah visited her father's old store on Oak Street. It was now a small bakery. The owner, a woman named Lucia, recognized Sarah from the news. "You're her, the FBI director. The one who caught those corrupt officers," Lucia said in surprise. Sarah smiled. "Yes, my father used to own this store." Lucia's eyes widened. "Mr. Chen, he was your father. He was so kind. Always gave my children free candy when we came in." Sarah looked around the store. It was bright and cheerful now. Very different from her father's time. "Did those officers bother you too?" Sarah asked. Lucia nodded. "When I first opened, yes, but not anymore. Not for the past few months." She looked curious. "Was that because of you?" "My team has been watching them for a while," Sarah admitted. "We needed to gather enough evidence." Lucia reached out and took Sarah's hand. "Thank you. My children can grow up in a better Westridge because of what you did." That evening, Sarah met with her FBI team at their temporary office in town. Agent Patel had new information from Mayor Bradley's cooperation. "The mayor gave us access to hidden financial records," Agent Patel explained. "They show payments to Judge William Harris in the federal court and Senators James Roberts and Lisa Chen." Sarah looked up sharply at the last name. "Senator Chen. Any relation to me?" Agent Patel shook his head. "We checked already. No relation. Just the same last name." Sarah nodded, relieved. "What about the drug connection? Where were the drugs coming from?" "A cartel based in Mexico," Agent Patel said. "They used Westridge as a distribution point for the entire state. The officers protected the local dealers. The mayor provided city contracts to businesses owned by the cartel for money laundering. The police chief made sure no real investigations happened." Sarah studied the chart on the wall showing all the connections. "And the senators? They blocked federal funding for drug enforcement in this region. And they helped appoint Judge Harris, who dismissed cases against anyone connected to the cartel." Sarah stood up. "We need arrest warrants for the senators and the judge. Tonight." Agent Patel looked surprised. "That will cause a political earthquake." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "Sometimes you need to shake the ground to build something new." As night fell over Westridge, people gathered in the town square. Someone had organized a community meeting. They talked about what kind of town they wanted to build now. How to choose honest leaders. How to keep each other safe. From her hotel window, Sarah could see the gathering. Small lights from candles and phone flashlights dotted the square. She thought about joining them, but decided against it. This was their moment, not hers. Her phone rang. It was the FBI director calling from Washington. "Sarah, the arrest warrants for the senators and judge are approved, but this is going to cause a storm. Are you sure about this?" Sarah watched the people of Westridge coming together in the square below. "Yes, sir. I'm sure. We follow the evidence wherever it leads, no matter who it touches." 1 week later, Sarah Chen stood in front of a large group of reporters in Washington, D.C. Camera lights flashed as she prepared to make her statement. Behind her stood the Attorney General of the United States and several high-ranking FBI officials. "Today, I am announcing the arrests of Federal Judge William Harris, State Senator James Roberts, and State Senator Lisa Chen on charges of corruption, racketeering, and obstruction of justice," Sarah said in a clear, strong voice. The room erupted with questions. Reporters shouted and raised their hands. Sarah remained calm and continued. These arrests are part of our ongoing investigation that began in Westridge. What we found there was just one small piece of a much larger network of corruption. She pointed to a large map on the screen behind her. Red dots showed cities and towns across the state. The corruption in Westridge was repeated in 12 other communities. Local police working with drug dealers, mayors and city officials helping to launder money, and state and federal officials protecting the entire operation. The Attorney General stepped forward. This is one of the largest corruption cases in our state's history. We believe the network has been operating for at least 20 years. After answering a few questions, Sarah left the press conference. She had more work to do. The case would take months, maybe years to fully unravel, but the most important parts were done. The arrests in Westridge had started a chain reaction that could not be stopped. 2 days later, Sarah returned to Westridge. She had promised herself one last visit before focusing on the larger case. The town looked different already. People walked the streets with their heads held high. Store owners stood proudly in their doorways. Children played in the park without parents nervously watching for trouble. Sarah visited the cemetery where her father was buried. She placed fresh flowers on his grave. "We did it, Dad," she said quietly. "The people who hurt you can't hurt anyone else now." As she stood there, an old man approached slowly, leaning on a cane. He stopped a respectful distance away. "Miss Chen," he said, "I thought that was you." Sarah turned to look at him. "Yes." The old man smiled sadly. "You wouldn't remember me. I owned the dry cleaning shop next to your father's store. Mr. Lee was my name." Sarah's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Lee, of course I remember you. You used to give me hard candies when I came to your shop with my father." Mr. Lee nodded. Pleased she remembered. "Your father was a good man, a good friend. We suffered under those officers together." He looked down at the grave. "He would be so proud of you, so proud of what you have done for our town." "Thank you," Sarah said softly. "That means a lot to me." Mr. Lee looked around the peaceful cemetery. "Those officers came to my shop too. Every month for 15 years. I paid them because I was afraid. We were all afraid. But not anymore," Sarah said. "No, not anymore." Mr. Lee smiled. "The new mayor seems honest. She was a school teacher before. The new police chief is from another town with a good record." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Lee spoke again. "Will you stay in Westridge now? Perhaps open your father's store again?" Sarah shook her head. "No. I need to finish the larger case. Make sure everyone involved faces justice." Mr. Lee nodded in understanding. "But you will visit sometimes." "Yes," Sarah promised. "I will visit." Later that day, Sarah walked through the town square. A crew of workers was taking down the old town sign and putting up a new one. The old sign had said Westridge, a traditional American town. The new one read Westridge, a community of courage. Sarah stopped to watch as they raised the new sign into place. A small crowd gathered to watch too. Someone recognized Sarah, and soon people were coming up to thank her. A woman hugged her. A man shook her hand. Children looked at her with wide, admiring eyes. The new mayor saw her from across the square and came over. "Director Chen, this is a surprise. We didn't know you were in town." "Just a quick visit," Sarah said. "I wanted to see how things were going." The mayor smiled. "Things are going well. We have a lot of work ahead, but people are hopeful now. Your case has inspired other towns to look at their own police departments and local governments." "Good," Sarah said. "That's how change happens, one community at a time." As the sun began to set, Sarah walked to her car. She had a flight back to Washington that night. As she opened her car door, she looked back at the town. Lights were coming on in homes and shops. People were walking together, talking and laughing. Westridge was healing, and because of what started here, other towns would heal too. The work was far from over, But Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She thought of her father one last time before getting in her car. "This one was for you, Dad," she whispered. Then she drove away, leaving Westridge better than she had found it. In Washington, new evidence was waiting. New cases needed her attention. The fight against corruption would continue. But now Sarah knew, more than ever, that justice was possible, even in the most unlikely places, even after years of waiting. Justice could still find its way home.